Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Podcast, episode number 78. Jim Stickles, Deer Biologist, and Jeff Schmitz, Big Game Logic. Big Buck Registry is a virtual museum of hunting stories. We preserve a piece of Americana by interviewing and recording hunters about their hunts and experiences from across the country. And who knows, maybe we'll learn a thing or two along the way that'll help us take our hunt to the next level.
Hey, this is Dr. Karl Miller, and you're listening to my favorite hunting podcast on the internet, the Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Podcast.
This is Crystal Buskirk, from anti-hunter to hardcore hunter. That's who I am. And you're listening to my favorite hunting podcast on the internet, the Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Podcast.
Hi, this is Michael Montgomery from the Hoosick Area QDM Co-op, and I shot buck nasty. And you're listening to my favorite hunting podcast ever, Jay and Dusty's on the Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Podcast.
Welcome to the show, everybody. This is your co-host, Dusty Phillips of the Big Buck Registry Big Buck Podcast, and I'm joined today with the host, Jay Scott. Jay, how are you, buddy?
Good.
Oh, that's no good.
I'm glad you called me the host this week instead of I'm just glad.
You got to get more fired up than that.
Dude, I am so pumped up though. No, I was like doing everything I could to just dumb it down so I felt like I wasn't excited. We got some serious stuff going on.
We do have some serious stuff going on, you know. It couldn't be better. I don't think it could be.
Few little things I wanted to just kind of fill you in on. We have surpassed over 100,000 downloads of this podcast as of last week.
That's a beautiful thing.
We've had our best month ever, and I cannot say thank you enough from the deepest parts of my heart to say thank you for listening to our show.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's one of them things where without the listeners, we would just be two guys recording each other.
Yeah. We're on schedule for over 30,000 downloads for the month, which is by far our best month ever, and it's just blowing me away.
You know, that's awesome. The word's getting out. You know, you're behind us, and we're going to take this empire of fans, listeners, friends,
community,
and we're going to push forward, and we want you guys to be right there with us the whole way.
Yes, you're a community. We are a community of hunters banding together. A united group of hunters at the Big Buck Registry. And, man, I'm just psyched to be a part of this whole thing.
Absolutely. You know, we thank you very, very much from the bottom of our hearts.
How's the weather out in Ohio?
You know, it's finally cooling down.
You still swimming in your swimming pools?
No, that's been over for a little while, but
not far from it.
Yeah, it's not. Wow, it's been 45, 50 degrees.
I saw a turkey strutting today with a whole flock of hens like it's springtime.
That's craziness.
Which is weird because November was the exact opposite.
Yeah, I think Ohio has 3 seasons.
Okay, what do you got?
Summer, fall, and confused.
Yeah.
You think that's what's happening in New Hampshire?
Something. Man, I was watching deer eat out of my backyard for the last 2 nights. It's like all of a sudden now the deer season's over and it ended like last week. Here they come.
They know.
Yeah.
They heard you say that you're putting your stuff up. Maybe they got. You think they talked to Santa? What if they got an iPhone? They're listening to the Big Buck Registry Big Buck Podcast.
Rockin' Rudolph, man. Rockin' Rudolph. Well, what I think is going on, and we're going to learn a little bit about this today on our show, is how long it takes for a herd of deer that's pressured by hunting pressure to come back and restore themselves to a previously hunted area.
Yeah, it's one of them things where today on the show, you need to listen. You need to take these informational words right from a biologist's mouth and apply them in the whitetail woods.
That's right. Now we're talking to Jim Stickles and Jeff from Big Game Logic. Now Jim is a study of Dr. Karl Miller. Everybody knows who Dr. Karl Miller is. He was a guest of ours a few shows ago, and he's one of the best deer biologists in the whole country and has been for quite a while. Well, Jim got to study under Karl, and we get to learn a ton of what Jim has learned And believe me, this just barely scratched the surface of what Jim knows. So we need to have him back again.
Yeah, for sure.
But then we get to talk to Jeff from Big Game Logic, and Jim is a consultant for Big Game Logic, and it was one of the tools that they use to basically monitor deer movement throughout the year to figure out where they go during the rut, how fences affect certain high traffic areas with automobiles, and a study of a new type of fence to keep the deer kill down, and just fascinating other stuff. Stuff you want to know as a hunter.
Yeah, it's going to blow your mind. It really is. We get into some pressure studies where the biologists actually had collars on the deer, and they actually journaled the hunting traffic, when the hunter's there, when he's not, what's going on, why the hunter's there, and they're able to do that through GPS collars on the deer. And man, I'm telling you, this is a show that you're going to learn a lot about hunting.
Yep. So Jim Stickles from the study of Dr. Karl Miller, and Jim is now a wildlife biologist or deer biologist for the state of Florida, and Jeff Schmitz, who was one of the founders of Big Game Logic. Let's get him on.
Let's do it.
Jeff and Jim, welcome to the Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Podcast. How are you tonight?
Good. How about yourself?
Living the dream. Doesn't get any better. Get talking to two very knowledgeable individuals that hunt and know about hunting. And Dusty, I'm going to include you as a third person.
I'm in real trouble.
You are? Why are you in trouble?
Because I got Jay, Jim, and Jeff. Bear with me, everybody. Bear with me. It's going to get me at some point in time. So
yes, this is the first.
Just a heads up.
Excellent. If we can get Dusty a little confused on air, that's great.
Uh-huh.
Well, guys, thanks for joining us. I'm eager to pick your brains about deer and all the great things you've learned. Jim, you're coming out of the University of Georgia and working with Karl Miller, and Jeff,
yes.
You've created this great thing called Big Game Logic that helps and comprehensively track deer for the hunter, and I assume for all the stuff Jim's doing too.
That's correct. Yep.
Very cool. Well, Jim, let's get into some of the stuff you're doing. Tell me about where you are right now.
Right now I'm in Florida. I just recently got a job at Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission as the assistant deer program coordinator down here. So that's where I'm at right now.
Very nice. And that was a result of your studies that you've done in graduate studies, right, with Dr. Karl Miller?
Absolutely, yeah. We did. I did my graduate research under Dr. Karl Miller and also Dr. Bob Warren. What we did was we had GPS collars outfitted on several deer along a stretch of I-20 in Madison, Georgia. And what we were doing is we were monitoring the effectiveness of a new fence design. And this design is supposed to work as a one-way barrier. Preliminary indications show that it's working in that manner. The idea is that this fence is shorter. It's only about 4.5, 5 foot high, and it has an outrigger angled at 45 degrees away from the highway, and it's strung with 4 strands of high tensile wire. And the idea behind this is that as deer approach the fence from the woods, they have an extra obstacle above their head, and they have a hard time trying to figure out and negotiate that jump. But if for some reason maybe a tree falls on the fence, or maybe there's a bad accident, a car makes a hole in the fence, and the deer are able to access the roadway somehow, if that were an 8-foot deer fence, the deer would pretty much be trapped in the roadway until it got hit by a car, or until it was able to make its way back to the hole, or maybe even circumvent an fence end. But with this new fence design, since it's only about 3 or 4 foot high, the outrigger design is not facing the deer when they are going from the road to the woods. So they are able to jump out of the road back into the woods anywhere along that stretch, as long as they're good with jumping a fence. So
sounds like a pretty well-designed fence.
Yes, it took several years of the design. Actually, my part of the project was phase 3 of the 3-phase project. The first phase of the project started at the University of Georgia, where they were just looking at different types of objects and devices that were supposed to keep deer out of roads to help reduce deer vehicle collisions. For example, they tested pure tone sound, similar to the ones that are made by deer whistles. They found out those don't work at all. They used reflectors, some of these deer reflectors that were advertised to, as light was hitting them, it would create some sort of visual barrier. And they found out that with a certain color of these reflectors, deer were actually more apt to run into the road than run out of it or away from it. So when all was said and done, they found out that this they tested several fence designs as well, and this fence design that we worked on performed similar to an 8-foot fence in its effectiveness of keeping deer out of an area where they didn't want to be, and it was a lot cheaper.
I got to ask, where do you get a set of these reflectors for putting deer in your area?
I have no idea. I have no idea.
I surely this season could use a set.
Right.
Perhaps if you contact David Osborne, they might have some left over at the deer pen. I can't remember if we still have some in one of the sheds where we have extra equipment from all the past studies or not. So maybe contact him.
All in good fun. You guys can't take me seriously. It's all in good fun.
I can put that on my tree.
There you go. So you can sell them to
me too. Absolutely.
Sell them to the automobile enthusiasts as deer repellents, and then sell them to the hunters as deer attractants. It's a beautiful system. I love it.
Nice. We can always put up those deer crossing signs, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
I'm not sure.
That always.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you guys heard the YouTube thing a while back.
I did hear it.
Yeah.
And we're probably going to get a message saying, Jim's the reason that they put up the deer crossing sign where they did.
Oh God, I hope not.
That's one of the funniest jokes out there. I say it makes me laugh every time. So Jim, what was it?
People out there.
Absolutely, Jim. What was it like working with Karl Miller?
It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of work.
Yeah.
I would come to him with an analysis. We'd hem and hop. I'd look it over, look at the data, try to see what the data was telling us, and then realize I need to go back and do the analysis again, bring it to him again, and then something else will stand out to us, and either we would need to do another analysis or redo the analysis we just did with just some minor tweaks and changes. And minor tweaks and changes, even when you're working with a data set of GPS points that has, I think it is over 200,000 GPS points, just little minor tweaks can take quite a bit of time.
And this is all with the collars that you were using?
Right, yeah. We outfitted our deer with GPS collars, so that way we were able to monitor the deer before we modified the outrigger or the highway fence, and after we put the outrigger on. So the idea was that they would have approximately a year where they would have access to the right-of-way with the current fence that was already in place, and then we would modify the fence and monitor the GPS locations afterwards, see if they were actually able to access the right-of-way after the outrigger fence was put in place. Gotcha.
So you've got these collars, and they're GPS enabled. And how does the data work? Does it send a signal every time it moves so far or after so much time? How does that all work?
Okay, so our collars, they actually store the location on the collar, and they were set to collect a location once every hour. I don't know if you've ever played with GPS units before, but have you ever used the tracks feature where you just turn the tracks on and it follows your path?
Yes.
Okay, well, the GPS data is kind of like that. It doesn't connect the dots in between. There are programs that you can use to do that, to connect the dots in between.
Okay.
But the collars, they store the locations on the collars themselves, and then we had a download unit. I would actually go into the field, get somewhere around maybe a little bit over 100 yards from the deer, and I was able to download all the data from collar onto my computer directly. And then from there, I can process the data any way that we needed to.
Interesting. So it's capturing longitude and latitude, or something similar to that. So it's giving you position, and then is it capturing a date at the same time?
Yep, it collects a date, time, location in the form of latitude and longitude, It also, the collars I had also collected, I think it was temperature and, a couple other things.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So, then you had to get within 100 yards of the deer, and you were able to have some kind of a communication between your computer and the device?
Right. Not all GPS collars are like that. The reason we chose that type of collar was mainly because we were collaring adult deer. Adult deer don't really move all that much, and it wasn't too much of a hassle to go out there and get within 100 yards of a deer, especially during daylight hours. They stick pretty tight, believe it or not, when we actually go to download data. You'd be amazed at how often you're 100 yards from the deer and you don't even know it. But not all collars work like that. Like I was saying, some collars are satellite enabled, and they will send the locations to a satellite and then directly back to your computer, like in the form of a text message. So you can get an email or a text message, and it'll have all of your data right there. You don't even have to go into the field. So some collars are like that. Collars that we had were a little bit cheaper in price, but we had to go out and manually collect the data.
Gotcha. Now, what kind of software or are you using to study the data points?
We mainly use ArcGIS. It's a geographic information system.
Okay.
Very complex software. It's not really user-friendly, but it can do some amazing things. So that's mainly what we were using.
Gotcha. Okay. So what can you say that you learned about deer movement in general from your studies? And maybe the fence study, but any other studies that you've done under Karl?
Oh, man. Geez, where do I start?
It's a long list, huh?
It is, yeah. It really is a long list. I think I'll start off with something that we did a couple of years ago. Once we got the collars on, I really wanted to start playing around with some data and to look at some information of the deer that we had collared with regard to hunters. So what I did was there was a pretty large property in the area. There's a bunch of hunters that were willing to participate. So I ended up giving them a hunting journal. So I knew when they were in the field, and I could go back and look at the data and find out what the deer were doing while the hunters were in the field. And there was another graduate student out of Auburn. He did a very similar study. And actually, we designed our studies in a very similar way. But his study was all bucks. Mine was all does. It just, for me, it was the way it worked out with the collars. A lot of my buck collars ended up falling off before the hunting season. There was a manufacturing problem with those. But he has a lot of buck data, and like I was saying, the study design was very similar, and our results were very similar. And those results were that it doesn't take very much hunting pressure at a stand to cause deer to not use that stand area during daylight hours. It doesn't mean that they're going nocturnal, so to say, like they're still moving at the crepuscular hours that they normally move. They just stop using that area during daylight hours. I think it was something like 3 hunts or about 12 hours of hunting pressure total. And after that much hunting pressure had been applied, nearly 90% or more of the locations in the general vicinity of the stand, for me it was a 100-yard buffer. For him, he kind of outlines the visible area from a stand, which could be 100 yards or it could be more than 100 yards. But anyway, the visible area for a hunter or 100 yards for me, and 90% of the GPS locations were at night after that much hunting pressure. I thought that was outstanding.
Wow.
I mean, that really puts things into perspective.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it does. Holy smokes.
All right, while we're right there, did you go further to how long of estimated break it would take to have the deer come back to the area?
He calculated that. I think it was like something like about 3 to 4 days. I did not calculate that. I just paid attention to how much time it took before a reaction was detected. So
that's fascinating.
That's yeah, absolutely.
Wow, that's interesting.
That's very interesting. Now, Jim, you're doing some consulting work with Big Game Logic. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, they consult with me every now and then for ideas. We've got Jeff on the phone there, and you probably want to say a couple words about the program, I imagine.
Yeah, he's been a big help. He's been a big help. A lot of the ideas that we have for the site come from him. So it's much appreciated.
Gotcha. Jeff, tell us a little bit about Big Game Logic. I mean, I've got a chance to look at it, and it's a very comprehensive system, and I think I could get to love it tremendously. And there's so much that you can do with it. Where did this whole concept come from? What's your background?
Sure. Actually, I was a MIS major. Now I'm an operations manager for a big company here in Milwaukee. So I'm just a weekend warrior, I guess, as it comes to hunting. And I've hunted all my life. We got a big chunk of land in central Wisconsin with 3 other owners, and they're kind of scattered all across the state and Minnesota. And we kind of had an idea to develop something, just a website to communicate and I guess schedule events when we're going to head up to the cabin and stuff like that, and maybe share trail cam pictures, bucks that we're seeing, since we're also scattered around.
Sure. And
it gets to be kind of cumbersome, emailing pictures and stuff. So it kind of started from there, and then my brother and I were thinking that, this could be something that really anybody could use, and something that with social media these days that people would probably want and it could take off. So, I mean, that's kind of where it started. And then meeting with, a friend of mine that's in IT, he has his own web design company. And we just started, I guess, spitballing there, and that's really how it took off. We've added, we started in 2011. We were a free service then, and we met Jim at one of the QDMA conventions.
Yeah.
And he contacted us, which is great, and he really liked the product, and we're just adding things on right and left since then. So, I mean, it's kind of evolved. It's just a social networking site. You can use a satellite map and keep track of where your stands are, your trail cameras, food plots, and stuff like that. And now it's evolved into, tracking trail cam data and all the date and time stamps for the pictures, attaching weather to it, tracking trophies, other species such as coyotes, wolves, black bear, anything really big game. And, just really given, not just detailed, right? I mean, it's not for everybody. I don't think, the person that just goes up and rifle hunts is going to spend time on this. But, if you like sifting through camera or trail cam pictures, and you're just kind of curious how certain weather conditions affect the movement, this is a great tool to do that and just kind of learn more about your properties and become an expert of, your own hunts. So.
Gotcha. Now, Jim, how does this kind of software play into some of the stuff that you do, either for the university or just stuff that you play around with? How do you feel this comes into play?
Right. So remember I was talking about ArcGIS a little bit earlier?
Yeah. And
how it's not a very user-friendly program.
Right.
So while I was walking by Jeff's booth when I was going to the QDMA convention, I saw how they had created things that looked like little heat maps. And that's what we call them on the website. There's little hot spots of activity.
Sure, I've seen
I thought that was interesting because we use GIS to do something very similar. And so I went, I grabbed their card, I went back home, and I started playing around with the website. And I was like, wow, this is like all the user-friendly things that I wish GIS had, but it doesn't. And so, like, just simple things like adding trail cameras and tree stands to a map, and adding deer sightings and trail camera photos and all that other information. Big Game Logic brought all that stuff together, and we were better able to pattern deer because of it. What I used it for primarily was for monitoring deer at bait sites when I was doing my deer captures. And there were several things that we used it for, and several of the tools that we developed in more recent, or not long after Jeff asked me to be on the pro staff, were the result of actually doing some field testing and realizing, okay, well, we need something on the map that shows the best tree stands for the wind direction, because I've got 2 different technicians and they're always calling me to find out what the best wind directions are for the stands that we have. And so we were able to add that feature onto the map, and now with just the click of a little checkbox, after you've set your best winds for each stand location. All you have to do is click a little checkbox and it shows the best stands for that wind direction. I didn't get any more phone calls about wind direction after that feature was added.
Gotcha. All right.
Another thing was we needed to figure out a way to bring a large data set or large numbers of trail camera photos into the website so we didn't have to enter each one manually because that was taking a lot of time.
Right.
So we created another little feature where what we do is we put a little program into the folder where all of your trail camera pictures are, and what it does is it extracts the date and time stamp. And then we can bring that date timestamp into the website. It connects it all with the weather, and then we're able to make it into a bunch of charts, graphs, so you can see exactly what the activity pattern is at that specific location. So you can look at all your trail cameras and figure out, okay, which camera, which spot is getting the most daylight activity right now, and do I have the right wind for it? Okay, that's the one I want to hunt. You know, that's kind of how. That's kind of how it works. But if you think about it, really, a trail camera is just like, it's almost like putting a GPS collar on the deer, only it's a stationary GPS device. We know where the location is. We can identify individual animals using the trail camera photos, and it's got a date and time stamp. Everything that I have, all the little pieces of information that I get from a GPS collar, I can get from a trail camera.
Right.
And so you can see where it'd be very advantageous to be able to process that data efficiently. And that's what we were able to do with the website.
Gotcha. So it'll take the pictures that you had on your game cameras and then process that with a date and time. Then from there, you know moon phase, you know weather, you know wind direction. You can basically track all that stuff backwards for that day, and you kind of know what was going on.
Correct.
That's
It's like having a deer biologist as your leader to your tree stand.
Yeah, it's like
I mean, you're kind of your own consultant, right? I mean, you can look at it any way you want and kind of decipher the information. So it's been great for our land too. So
that's pretty
I've
cool.
used it to bag a couple bucks under there. So I've been very, very happy with it.
So Jeff, you've started using this back in 2011.
Yep.
And obviously it's progressed.
Yeah, quite a bit actually.
Quite a bit.
Back then, I think we could only enter a single picture in at a time.
Okay.
And then, like Jim said, that was getting kind of tedious. So then now we kind of just use that for tracking notables. You know, if you got a trophy or a hit list, I guess if you call it, then you're going to want to import the picture just to share with your cam members. But otherwise, you just take so you manage the images on your hard drive and then run an executable and take the date and timestamps and just import that into our website, which then we go grab the weather and we can go back, I think, to 2008 and get the historical data for your date and timestamps. You can also enter, information by, use the journal feature. So if you're out hunting and, hunted for 6 hours and you can log the sightings that you had for that hunt, and then we keep track of, the number of hours that you spend in the stand and how many deer you see, per sit, per hour, and buck to doe ratio and all the scientific stuff that Jim is nuts for.
Gotcha.
We kind of throw that in there.
I got a question there. Like, say for instance, you got a food plot out. Is there a way that you can note in there of what particular seed that, or say they're eating on alfalfa in one particular field? Is there a way to note that?
Absolutely. We have a food plot management feature too, where you would outline where your food plot is. We keep track of the acreage for you, which is a nice tool. And then within that, you can click on that and view photos, and images of what you planted. You can share that with the other camp members, kind of see how it's progressing along. We keep a maintenance log in there for, when you went up there and mowed or planted or, added fertilizer, whatever, lime or whatever. And then also, keep a year by year notebook of what you planted. You can keep track of the brand of whatever seed and what you planted and when. So yeah, it's that's something that we're looking into expanding a little bit more too, and maybe partner up with some, food plot company or something like that, and try to get more involved in that next, I think. So, but yeah, you can absolutely keep track of everything on there, and pretty useful.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it's multi-successful for everybody. You know, you can use it personally. You can use it as a deer hunting camp that say that you're in a lease with 4 or 5 other people, and also maybe a neighbor to the property that you're more than happy to share information with. You guys could all log everything together, and it's one big data plan for, you know, some buck whacking is what it sounds like.
Absolutely. Actually, Ryan Tao, he's one of the, I think he's the Missouri cooperative, QDMA cooperative coordinator, and he advocates using Big Game Logic just for that purposes. So the QDMA co-ops can keep track of the land properties around them that are involved in the co-op, and they can add their harvest data and their observation, mainly their harvest data. I'm not sure how much they want to share their observation data with each other, but they definitely want to share their harvest data and find out whether the cooperative is meeting management objectives.
Right, I see. Yeah. The next question is like, are either one of you like actual what I want to say here? Jay, work with me. The QDMA, are you guys like representative for an area or anything?
No, I'm not. We've partnered with them in the past, as far as like a corporate or a QDMA sponsor and stuff like that. So
gotcha.
That's really the only involvement I've had in there.
It seems like the deeper we get into the more of the biology side of whitetails, the more QDMA is popping up.
Right. Gotcha.
Absolutely. I mean, we absolutely advocate QDM anytime we get a chance. It's, quality deer management is, it's not trophy deer management. It's total herd management is what it is. So anytime, like you were saying, the biology of deer comes up, QDMA, the Quality Deer Management Association, usually comes with a conversation because they do have biologists on staff, and pretty much all of their information comes directly from scientific literature, and they've just got they got a fantastic staff with great people and very knowledgeable about the whitetail deer.
And that's the target audience for software like ours. So
gotcha. So let me just summarize what I know this program can do so far. You can take a huge data set of photos that your game camera takes. Now, does it work with any game camera?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, so any game camera on the market that timestamps the photo, you can then upload in a batch of 100, 200, 300 photos, whatever it is, up into your system. And then how do you tag what's in the photo? You have to do that manually?
You can do it a number of ways. When you sort through and manage your folders on your hard drive, you can separate the notables. So if you're looking through and you got, say, 20, 30 pictures of a trophy that you're tracking, you can just put that into a folder and then upload that as a batch. And then on the website, you would just then tag it as whatever that notable is, and it attaches all the attributes to that. Or you can go onto the site and, if you just had an observation, let's say you were walking and seen them in this area, you can click on the map and then it brings up a log entry, and you can tag a notable that way if it's a buck or a doe. But really, with the trail cam pictures right now, you really just are marking observations. We don't really separate it by buck or doe at that point. And I can kind of let Jim talk about the reasoning behind that. But in the future, we are going to add a desktop application too that would help manage trail cam photos offline on your desktop too. So, that'll be a feature that we add in the future to separate between buck and does.
Gotcha. So, Jim, as you look at some of the data points that Big Game Logic can use and utilize, what kind of conclusions can you come up with that will be more useful for the hunter using this kind of software? I mean, you use something similar for the university studies, but it's more complex and not user-friendly. Does this really carry over to does it have a good GUI, meaning a graphic user interface, where this thing is kind of dumbed down so that the everyday hunter can use it?
Right. Yeah. That's basically what the website is. It's a more user-friendly version. Now, you still have to have some computer skills. That being said, with the GIS software, even when you come to Big Game Logic, you do have to have some computer skills. For example, as Jeff just mentioned, you need to have sort of like a filing system that you use to keep track of your trail camera photos and keep track of individual animals. I don't know about you, but generally what I tend to do is have a folder with the date that I downloaded the pictures, and then another folder inside that has all the camera names, and then a folder inside the camera that has, maybe deer pictures, raccoon pictures, whatever. I separate them out by species. And then another folder that separates all the deer photos into, notable individual animals that I'm interested in, and then maybe I'll have all the does and fawns in a separate folder. So you do have to be able to actually put together some sort of folder system that you can manage quite well. And you do have to know how to navigate a website, obviously. And but other than that, it's pretty user friendly. You're able to, once you've entered the trail camera photos into the website, it doesn't take long for it to connect with the weather data, and you can see results within 10, 15 minutes, depending on how long or how many photos you bring in. Sometimes if you only have like 10, 15 photos to bring in, it'll be done within a couple minutes. I brought in about 1,300 hog photos the other night, and I think it was done in 10 minutes, connecting it all to the weather, and I was able to see my charts and graphs, and now I know where the hogs are.
Wow, that's a lot of photos.
And I know which camera they're going to during daylight hours. So as soon as the wind's right, you know where I'm going to be hunting.
Right.
Smells like a bacon sandwich.
It's not something that my dad would use, right? I mean, you got to be somewhat skilled, but I mean, it's a niche that we're after, and the diehards, the people that love to view trail cam images, and kind of the data geeks in us that
hey, easy guys,
like to try the pattern.
Jay's pretty old, so you guys be easy.
Not that old, man. I had did any of you guys have an Atari 800 growing up?
Oh wow!
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Well, that's an Atari.
My brother did.
Your brother did.
Yeah.
All right.
What's an Atari?
You know what that is, Jim? Yeah.
It's this program sounds like it's something that all hunters are missing. It just seems like you got the cake. This is the icing on the cake for your setup.
It really is. I mean, having a trail camera is a tremendous benefit in itself, because you're just looking at trail camera pictures, you're able to pick out some of that information that you need to know as a hunter, like where are my daytime pictures being taken. But I don't know how long you actually stare at a computer screen at pictures, but I've been doing it a lot lately, especially since I'm compiling a trail camera survey right now. And looking at the timestamps in each individual one and trying to remember all that information, especially when you have thousands of photos to process, it just becomes a blur. And that's kind of what Big Game Logic helps you do, or helps you organize. It keeps all that information in there, so it's not being stored in your head, it's being stored someplace else, and you're able to easily view it in the form of a report, in the form of charts and graphs and everything else, where you can see it and understand exactly what it's telling you.
Right. I mean, this sounds like let's say back in the day in Jay's time, something that would cost you a lot of money to have set up.
You'd be buying a lot of film with the old trail cameras. That'd be kind of hard to do.
Oh, sorry, Jay. I can't help myself, man.
You're funny. You're a funny man.
I'm sorry, man. I gotta apologize.
You're trying to tell me this whole device back in 1985 would fill up the entire basement of a library, is what you're saying.
Pretty much, but anyway, I mean, this sounds
my
like
dad still uses those can trackers, those old can trackers.
Yeah.
I think this is the last year though, when he had to get the film developed, it was $12 or $13, and he was like, "Okay, I'm done with this."
Oh, I spent thousands on the 35 millimeter.
Yeah, it's crazy, and the price of things were outrageous compared to nowadays. It's crazy.
Big Game Logic. Go ahead, guys. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, I was just saying that, now just trail camera pictures is so cheap. I mean, you might pay $150 for the camera itself, But, think about it back when you were paying for 35 millimeter film and how many pictures that was taking. And also, trail cameras back then had some of the same problems that they do now, and that they don't always capture deer. So you might have a whole roll of 35 millimeter film that's all squirrels. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas now you can just kind of filter through those and just find the deer pictures, and you might have thousands, but, that's better than what was it, 24, 36 photos that you can get out of 35 millimeter film.
Right.
We have just come tremendously far with the technology and how we're able to process that information.
I'm thinking about something right now. Let's say that you're somebody that is legit on the computer, and that's not me. But anyway, if you're legit on the computer and you know what's up with a website and how to, process data into the website, the Big Game Logic, this is something that just an average person that really has minimal hunting skills but is legit on the computer can really actually go in, set all this up, and shoot a monster because of Big Game Logic.
Well, first thing is you have to have a monster in the area that you're going to be hunting.
I agree with that. But I'm just saying.
And you have to spend the time in the woods, right? Yep. Exactly.
Right, but with the data that you can input into this system, it can take somebody that may not have, let's say somebody that has really low hunting skills, and I'm not dogging anybody out. But what I'm saying is, if you got minimal hunting skills and you're new to the hunting industry, you're just getting started. Say you get a hold of Big Game Logic, you got the computer skills, and that's your background. That's what you do, and you plug this monster in, and you start figuring out how to run Big Game Logic the correct way. This really could take somebody to the extreme as far as hunting knowledge of where to be, the right time, and make it happen.
It can help you out a lot. Absolutely.
And you can read all the articles you want on, how it affects, or, Lee or Tiffany shooting a monster 12-pointer on their property and how they did it. But, it could be a lot different where you hunt on your property in your state or whatever. I mean, this helps you become an expert on your own, hunting grounds.
Right.
Right. Yeah. That's
the
word I was looking for. An expert in your area. That you've summed it up right there.
Quickly. So it's you could take years and years of being in the field on your land and learning the land and how it all plays out and how all the game animals travel, interact, and over the course of the entire year, generally speaking. Or you could kind of consolidate all this stuff down into a year, but have actual points, not just what you thought you remembered.
Yep.
Right. That's exactly right.
Jim and I were talking this year too about, you always hear about how the moon phase affects deer movement, but, I have 5,000 or 6,000 data points over the last 3 years on the website, and the impact, what I can see, at least where I hunt, is minimal. It's, they might move a little bit later in the morning, but they're still moving during the day. It's not, it just seems to contradict some of the things that I've read about. But maybe it's just different on our land. I don't know, but it helps you, I guess, develop a game plan on when to sit and how long to sit and where to sit.
Well, this brings up a good question, Jim. I've been dying to ask you this question because I know we've had some interactions about the moon phases on the Big Buck Registry Facebook page. What can you tell us about moon phase from your studies at the University of Georgia and with Big Game Logic? Is there any truth to that?
But as far as moon phase goes, I mean, we're really entering a realm where we can actually look at that type of information. There's one biologist that's working on a moon phase study right now. His name is Marcus Lashley. And he would really be the person to ask in terms of what's going on in terms of moon phase, because he's been able to look at some GPS locations from different areas, from different studies throughout the country, and compile that data. I don't know what he's got for results yet, but he's the guy to ask. That being said, I have talked with Marcus personally, and the primary thing that comes out of it is deer primarily crepuscular. It doesn't matter what time of year it is. It can be spring, summer, fall, winter. It can be November, October, January, July. It doesn't matter. They're going to be crepuscular, meaning they're most active or moving the most right around the hours of dawn and dusk. So that part stays true throughout the year. Now, every now and then, like I'm sure you've noticed that there'll be days where deer seem to be more active during daylight hours than others. As far as moon phase playing into any of that, I really don't know how much it really affects their movement on any individual day. And I don't think there's anything out there that can really tell us other than Marcus's research, because, like I said, we're just being able now, because we have the technology, to start answering that question. And so as far as like the solar lunar tables and anything like that, I have no idea what data went into that, but I have a pretty good idea that it's not anything that's probably legitimate to deer, because, like I said, we just got the technology to be able to look at that in a meaningful way.
Gotcha. So, I've now and then I have an app on my iPhone, and I'll post a picture of the information that says that, this Saturday is going to be the best day to hunt because the moon phase is right. And it's, according to the solar lunar tables, it's either when the moon is directly below you or directly above you, meaning that we've got no moon at all or we've got a full moon. Those are supposed to be, according to the charts, the best days for high deer movement. I can't subjectively say that that's accurate. I've seen some days where that is accurate, but I've seen many days where that's not accurate. Yet, right, when I post that picture on the Facebook page, people go nuts. I mean, it's like,
oh yeah,
they will call in to work just because of this chart and take the day off.
I did. Don't tell them I did that. I called off. I said, man, I got to go hunting. Jay said so.
Right.
Yeah, I live and die by that.
So it is funny, but I never really truly believed that could be the case. Seems like, you wouldn't know until you actually got your own data set and did your own studies with software like you guys are talking about. That's really the only way to figure it out.
Absolutely. And like Jeff was saying, you've got what, probably 2.5 years of data in the one camp, Jeff?
Yeah.
Associate camp. All right, yeah. So it's got about 2 years worth of, or 2.5 years worth of data in that camp. If you look at the sightings by moon phase, it's pretty much just like a straight line bar that goes across. There's really nothing for a relationship there. And if you sort the information so that you can, if you sort it out by moon phase, so you're looking at the full moon, and then you're looking at the hourly pattern of activity, it's still crepuscular. There might be a little bit more morning activity or evening activity, depending on which moon phase that you're looking at. But as far as like having a significant impact on your hunting, well, if you're hunting whitetail deer, to be in the field during the morning and evening, because those are the high movement periods. The people that I know the people who I've heard hunt moon phase really hard, like the Drew brothers, even when they talk about moon phase, the first thing that they talk about is, or the first thing they say is, moon phase doesn't play in until after the weather's right. So as a deer hunter myself and a biologist, I'm looking at the weather first, and that's usually what I use first to, that's the first thing I go to whenever I plan on doing a hunt. I'm looking for what the temperature's doing. I'm looking at the wind direction. Mainly the wind direction is what I'm looking for. Because if the wind isn't right for a stand that I want to hunt, then I just don't hunt it. I just don't want to risk it.
All right, let's break that down some more, Jim. You're bringing up some very, very good topics here. All right, so as a hunter and a biologist who knows more about deer movement than most, you're saying that the first thing that you go to is weather conditions. That's the number one thing that you want to know first. Is that correct?
Wind specifically is the first thing I want to know. Okay. Which way is the wind blowing?
Okay.
Yep.
And what specifically do you want to know about the wind, other than that direction? How is it related to your deer stand setups?
Right. That's pretty much what I want to know. I want to know which direction it's blowing and how fast it's blowing, because sometimes how fast the wind is blowing can affect the wind patterns. For example, latent variable winds. I hate latent variable winds. They'll give you general wind direction. I like a wind direction or a wind that's going to be like 5 to 10 miles per hour. Kind of like a constant wind direction. It's a lot more predictable. You can figure out where your scent's going to be blowing.
Does it just mess up your whole day when there's a light variable wind coming in?
If there's a light variable wind coming in, yeah, I hesitate about even hunting at all those days, but, you can't kill a deer if you're not in the field.
Right.
But there are some days that, sometimes a light and variable wind is worth busting up your stand.
Right.
So it all depends.
So what's the best wind to hunt in? No wind?
I actually recommend having some wind.
Okay.
If there's no wind, you're probably going to end up with some sort of thermal wind, regardless of what the weather says. Since we're hunting those periods during morning and evening, you're often competing with thermal winds. And those are a whole different ballgame. I mean, the forecasted wind direction might say that the wind's going to be coming out of the west, but if you have a valley near you and you're hunting a ridge top, and the valley is to the east of you, those as the air cools, it's going to start dropping down into that valley, and all of your winds will be blowing down into that area. So if that's where the deer are coming from, that can ruin your day. You think because you're to the west of the valley that you're in the clear, but when the thermal winds come in and start blowing your wind in that valley in the complete opposite direction where it's forecast to blow, that can really ruin your day.
Gotcha.
So
all right,
yeah.
so the wind is important. What's the next most important piece of your hunting puzzle?
Where are deer during daylight hours?
Okay.
That's if I have trail cameras out, I want to know which trail cameras are catching deer during daylight hours. And this mainly comes into play for the early season and the late season, because at that point bucks are a lot more easy to pattern to a food source. During the rut, anytime during daylight hours is good, but at those points, I'm not looking so much at food sources. I'm looking at travel corridors. I'm looking for the funnels, the inside corners, any other types of pinch points that I can find, because that's where bucks that are cruising are likely going to be passing through. And so that's kind of how my strategy tends to go. If I can get a buck pattern to a food source early in the season, that's where I'll hunt. If I haven't got one by then and I'm hunting the rut, I'm going to travel corridors, and then I'll finish the season off on food sources again if I can get a good pattern on a buck. So
gotcha.
That's the general thing.
Okay. And are you looking at hunting during, you use the word, was it corpuscular? Is that what you said?
Yeah, crepuscular, meaning they're mainly active during dawn dusk.
Okay. And do you usually focus on dawn and dusk and take the afternoon off kind of thing, or are you an all-day hunter?
It depends. I've done all-day sits. I've done, just morning sits, just evening sits. I prefer evening sits because generally, deer are least active during the midday. So you can sneak into your stand. You pretty much know the deer are going to be bedded. You can sneak into your stand undetected and then catch that evening movement to a food source, or catch a buck getting back up to cruise and search for does and check the food plots for does and stuff. So generally I prefer an evening sit. Morning sits are a lot tougher. If I do a morning sit, I don't want to be set up on a food plot. Most of the time, and this just comes from experience, most of the time I've gone to a food plot in the morning, I'm bumping deer off the plot. And so I've busted my position. I'm not saying you can't kill a deer because you've been busted by deer. There'll still be some deer passing through probably, but I don't like giving away my position. So
gotcha. Okay.
Those are some general tactics. In the morning, I'll hunt closer to the bedding area, hoping to catch deer on the way back to that.
But still in a travel corridor, just in a different part of the travel corridor.
Right.
Gotcha. Deeper towards the bedding area in the morning, closer to the food source in the evening.
Right.
Got it. Okay. All right. Now, Jeff, you said that you used your software, Big Game Logic, to actually harvest a couple of nice deers. I was wondering if you might take this, we've been talking hypothetically here, I was wondering if you could actually walk us through kind of how you set up this whole thing using your software, and maybe give us a play-by-play of how the actual hunt went down.
Yeah, sure. Just from viewing trail cam photos that we had out all spring and throughout the summer, we identified a couple target bucks, I guess, and named them and put them up on the website as on the hit list.
I got to stop you right there. Let's hear their name.
Double G3. They're nothing fancy. I'm not that creative when it comes to names, but Double G3 and Boat 8. So the one that we actually harvested was with the G3 on the left side split at the base. So
gotcha.
yeah,
I'm always down for deer
creative.
names. I'm addicted to deer names. I don't know why I'm addicted though.
But we were just able to pattern them from even summer, knowing that these two bucks were more than likely, I guess, residents in our area. We do hunt in an area that we have some folks that do trophy manage, and you feel safe that these the younger bucks will be let go, and we have other areas that they'll shoot really anything that comes through, and nothing wrong with that. It's a trophy for everyone, and they are meat eaters, or meat hunters, I should say. But so I talked to neighbors and stuff like that. We've identified kind of where they were staying, and put trail cams between where we figured the bedding area was and where the food source was. We do have a neighbor that has some plots on their land with corn. We also put some plots up this year with corn, and we could see where they're moving from and to. And they were traveling, really a stretch of about 1.5 miles. And, the one in particular had a lot of daytime photos. So we figured that we'd probably get a good shot at some point if we hunted along, like Jim was saying, this corridor. And lo and behold, we got lucky and got a daytime sighting of him, and kind of patterned, I guess, where we're going to sit based on that, and came in by November 8th of this year in the morning. Actually, there was a bigger one that was with it, and I think it was the boat 8 that we had tagged. And shortly after came the double G3 about 20 yards away and put it right through the heart. And and on our site too, when we do harvest an animal, we keep track of obviously all the photos that you tagged it with. So, if you look at the photo, we keep a photo album of that particular buck, and it shows all the different in sequence, right, in chronological order of when you see them, what the weather conditions were for that day, and where on the map that you had seen them. So you can walk through each sighting, whether it was a trail cam image or just a journal hunt. And so it's a pretty cool yearbook that we keep for the user, and
Gotcha.
kind of tell the story of the harvest.
Gotcha.
But nothing exciting, but definitely a lot of fun, and it's just kind of neat to I guess I only get chances to go up there on weekends. I got 2 young kids and a job, unfortunately. Well, fortunately, but I can't spend as much time in the woods. And this allows me, the software does, to really maximize my hunts. So I could spend the weekdays down here looking through pictures, getting excited, and kind of detail my game plan. And then once I get up there, I got Friday night to hunt, Saturday to hunt, and Sunday morning. So I got to make the best of it. And we did it. It works. It definitely works.
Well, I would think that there would be a lot of people in that exact boat where you work all week. Maybe you take a week off during the hunting season from work, but in general, it's you gotta, if you had a tool like this to really hone in where those deer are during daylight hours, that's where you want to be, and you don't have to be there observing day in, day out to figure that out with this kind of stuff and with the use of game cameras. Now, that being said, how many game cameras do I need to effectively study an area?
How big is the area?
That's a good question. So,
yeah.
Let's say it's a 10-acre piece. How many cameras would you use per 10 acres?
For 10 acres, well, I just use one camera for 10 acres. Now, generally, we tend to use one camera per 100 acres. That seems to cover grid pretty well.
Okay.
That's the standard amount for doing a trail camera survey, one camera per 100 acres. Let me see here. As far as if you want to go at a higher density of cameras, maybe like one per 50 acres, it depends on what your budget can do. But you can get pretty effective results with just one camera per 100 acres, or you can even go a little bit larger if you need to, if your budget needs to stretch out a little bit. Then you can have a lower density if necessary. But
Gotcha.
Getting out past one camera per 200 acres, now you're stretching.
Okay.
You're probably not going to get a full inventory of all of your deer unless you're running a really long survey.
Gotcha. All right. So, that's good information. So you need, for every 100 acres that you're hunting or observing, you got to have at least one camera to really get a good idea.
Right. Now, we talked a little bit earlier about moon phase and how it relates to deer movement, deer activity in the rut. I know we're probably getting down on time, so one thing I wanted to bring in was some of the research that I worked on with Dr. Miller was we developed a rut map for Georgia.
Okay.
And what we did was we used deer vehicle collisions as an indicator of deer movement activity.
Yes.
In other words, the more deer are moving in the field, the more they're crossing roads. The more they're crossing roads, the more they're getting hit by vehicles.
Right.
We found that to be a very good indicator of when the rut occurs. So if you're looking for information, local information on when the rut is in a specific area, probably one of the best people to ask for that information is not necessarily going to be a local hunter. It'd probably be the local auto body repair shop.
Right.
Because they're going to have that information. That's when they tend to be busiest.
Yeah, I mean, we notice that all the time driving, up to our cabin's probably 2.5 hours away, and we can always tell if it's going to be a good weekend by the number of deer carcasses you see on the side of the road. So it's
Gotcha.
usually a good indicator whether or not they're running around.
Would increased police reports of deer vehicle collisions be another place to look?
That's exactly what we used, actually. It was police reports of deer vehicle collisions. We got that data set from the Department of Transportation. And, we were able to compile that data for each county in Georgia and look at the incidence of deer vehicle collisions throughout, I think it was from September 1st to January 31st, because depending on where you are in Georgia, the rut's different.
Right.
Like up in the northeast corner, it's in like later November. Down in the southwest corner, it's in late December. And then throughout the majority of Georgia, it happens about early to mid-November. Along the coast of Georgia, there's a lot of mid to late October. So we were able to pick up that information just looking at deer vehicle collisions. We compared it to a rut map that was created previously. It's based on conception data, and on a regional basis, it was very similar. We looked at the individual counties where we had conception data, and deer vehicle collisions tended to peak right when deer conceptions were peaking as well. So it's a really good indicator of when deer are moving, or when the rut is on.
Gotcha. That's some good information. So if you're tied in with your local authorities, you could actually go down to the station and say, hey, what's going on this week? Or can I see your logs? And then kind of extrapolate from there and do your own little scientific study.
Yeah. I mean, never hurts to ask the police when they're hitting a lot of deer. Another person that you might want to go to is mailman. Just people who are on the road a lot.
Right.
They're seeing a lot of dead deer on the side of the road. They can give you that type of information.
Yep. Oh, what if there's a year, for example, and this may change year to year, where you don't see much roadkill at all? What does that mean? Does that mean anything?
I haven't seen a year where there wasn't very much roadkill. That might mean your deer populations are down if you're not seeing very much roadkill.
Right.
Either that or GDOT, or not GDOT, any Department of Transportation has done a really good job of preventing deer from crossing roads, if that's the case.
This is I just, from my own personal experience, this year, I believe, is probably the one year I've seen less deer killed on highways than any other that I can remember.
That really makes sense. With you being in New Hampshire, I imagine last winter was pretty dreadful.
Yep.
So I imagine deer herds are probably down in New Hampshire. That's just speculation, but I know last year's winter and the winter severity index is probably pretty high.
Gotcha.
And so I imagine there's some winter kill last year.
Yeah, it was a longer winter. It came in late, but it stayed for a long time. The snow wasn't particularly deep, but it was cold. So
yeah,
it was harsh here in Wisconsin. That was a big winter kill this past year. The gun harvest this year is way down for Wisconsin, so there's probably a big factor in that.
I'm going to ask a quick question to Jim. When does a yearling doe come into heat?
When does she come into heat?
Yeah, when should a hunter expect the yearlings to come into the heat cycle, the estrus phase?
Later in the season. If you're in the northern area of the United States, probably about now. It might even be even later into December. Generally, a yearling fawn, or let me see, Are you saying a yearling fawn or a 6-month-old fawn?
Either
one that was
or.
born this year. Okay.
Either or. Let's just run through both of them. We're late
right.
season. We're getting into late season. Let's talk about it real quick.
All right. So 6-month-old fawn will be coming in right about now. So that's a fawn that was born this year and then got up to a weight threshold of approximately 70 pounds, and she might become receptive right about this time of year in the northern area of the United States. A yearling, a doe that's 1.5 years of age, will come into estrus approximately the same time as the other does, as far as I know, which is in the northern area. It tends to be the first couple weeks of November. Usually around the second week in November is when the majority of deer are coming into estrus.
Awesome.
Or majority of does are coming into estrus. But you might see a lot of buck activity the week before. And we were able, as I talked about the deer vehicle collisions and the conception dates and stuff, what we saw was the deer vehicle collisions tended to peak 1 week before the peak in conceptions. What we think was going on there is, one, there's more bucks in the population than any other time of year pretty much. And those bucks are seeking out those first does coming into heat. So there might be more buck activity going on during that time, which can contribute significantly to increased sightings.
Yeah, that was a great answer. My question was there with the newborns this year. So you're saying approximately 70 pounds they should be coming into heat then?
Approximately, yeah. Approximately 70 pounds, and it should be coming to heat right about now. So if you're looking for some late season action, now's the time to see if you can get on these deer. The other thing about these young deer, this is what's really great about hunting the late season, is some of these young deer, I'm not gonna, I want to quote Dr. Grant Woods on this, because this is where this information actually comes from. I watch his show all the time, growingdeer.tv. And what's great is these young deer are very inexperienced, and so they've never been to a rut before, and they tend to be the first ones coming out to food source. And if they're coming into heat during that time, they don't really have very much experience. You can actually get a buck to follow one of these young does out into these food plots and have a pretty good chance of harvesting a buck late in the season, just because of the inexperience level of these young deer. Like I said, I think Dr. Grant stated that in his last growingdeer.tv episode. So if you want to check that out, go ahead. It's a great show to watch. It's one of the few shows deer hunting shows that I actually do watch. He does a great job of it.
Yeah, we're familiar with Dr. Grant Woods. We've had him on our show before, and then we did the follow up with Karl, and I remember exactly what you just said. I think he mentioned that on our show.
Fair enough.
Yeah, interesting, good stuff. So Jeff, if you wanted to give Big Game Logic a try, where would one go?
You can just log on to www.biggamelogic.com and register on there. We get a 30-day free trial, and now it's $2.99 a month. If you pay monthly, if you go for the full year, it's knocked down to $26. We also have a free iPhone app that goes along with it, and it acts as a field device. So you can actually be out in the field and use the GPS on the phone to add, any kind of waypoint, tree stands, trail cams, and journal your hunts on the application or the iPhone app, and then it'll communicate to the site when you have internet access.
Gotcha.
So it's a good, field communication tool.
Cool. And what are some of the things we can expect to see advancements in the software coming up?
We're going to get an Android app before the next season, and then we're also creating a desktop application that will help you manage the trail cam photos and sort them, and then it'll also communicate that up to the website. So it'll be a tool that'll make viewing pictures and sorting pictures, deleting pictures with no animals on it, sorting them by species and whatnot, offline on your desktop application, and then it's going to be a useful tool if where you hunt, you might not necessarily have any Wi-Fi access or internet access.
Gotcha.
So you can manage everything on your computer, and then when you do hook up to the internet, click a button, and it communicates to your website, your camp on the webpage.
To the Big Game Logic cloud is what you're talking about.
Basically, yes. Yep.
Yeah. Love it.
So yeah, and with Jim too. I mean, he's got a lot of ideas and a lot of things that are useful for the everyday average hunter. So we're constantly thinking up ideas, and we're going to keep on adding to them just to make this the most useful resource out there. And there is some concern that I do hear from people is about privacy too, and I just want to make sure that everybody should feel comfortable. I mean, it's all private. People can't just log on and see the information on your camp. I mean, there's no worries, I guess, if your neighbor's going to log on and see all your prime hunting spots and notice that some of the trophies you got running around their land. So it is completely private.
Gotcha. And Jim, what's your near future? You've accepted a job with the state of Florida, and
right.
What do you be doing down there?
I'll be trying to manage Florida's deer herd the best I can.
Yeah.
We'll see how that goes. It's a different deer herd down here. Very, very sensitive systems, and we were talking about rut dates earlier.
Yeah.
The rut dates through Florida can range anywhere from late July through, I think, late February.
Wow.
So through that entire period, somewhere in Florida, there's deer rutting. It's an interesting system to manage, to say the least. Not only that, but one of the things that we contend against here in Florida is Florida's got some really poor sandy soils, and that really puts a hurt on fawn production. The nutrition isn't as good. You can see it in the yearling deer herd. There's very few spots in Florida where you have a yearling that's more than a spike or a forkhorn. So that's kind of what we contend against in terms of managing the deer herd. Not only that, there's a lot of predators down here. Not only have coyotes made their way on the scenes, but there are panthers down here. And in some areas of Florida, we've got gators, we've got bears in some areas of the state as well. So there's just a lot of things going on, and so it's a very sensitive system, very interesting one to manage. Probably one of the most interesting systems in the United States in terms of deer management.
It sounds kind of complex because it doesn't really follow suit with anything else in the United States in a lot of ways.
It is, like I said, the most interesting, probably the most complex deer herd to manage in the United States.
Well, they've got a good man for the job. I can tell you that. So
I'm hoping so. I'm going to try.
Well, you've been well trained, so I think you'll do just fine. Gentlemen, this has been fantastic. Dusty, do you have any last questions for Jeff or Jim?
Being a deer biologist, coming from Dr. Karl Miller, Jim, give us one hunting tip that you've learned through your studies that would take a hunt to the next level.
I'll give you two hunting tips. First is always play the wind. But I mentioned it earlier. That's the first thing I'm looking at when I'm looking at the weather, and that's because I don't like getting busted. And a deer has a phenomenal sense of smell. And a lot of times you'll be sitting in a stand, you'll hear a deer blow off in the distance. You don't even see it. I'm sure you've all had this happen to you, because I know I've had it happen to me a lot. And chances are, if you check the wind, you'll find out that the wind is blowing right in the direction of that deer that's blowing. And so that's the first tip. And the second tip is don't overhunt your stands. I had to find this out the hard way so many times, and I think I really hit upon it earlier in the interview when I was talking about hunting a stand 3 or 4 times, pretty much turned the deer nocturnal at those stands. I can't tell you how many times the first time I hunted a stand is the most activity I'll see. And then each subsequent time after I sit there, I see fewer and fewer and fewer deer during daylight hours. So if I do see any deer at all during daylight hours, it's right at that last little bit of legal shooting light. And that might be the only deer that you see at the night. So I've learned to pull back off my stands and wait for the right wind conditions, wait for the right weather, and not hunt it too much. Maybe I hunt it 2-3 times a season rather than 2 or 3 times a week. You know what I mean? So that has really helped me a lot in terms of being able to consistently see deer during daylight hours, just playing the wind and not overhunting my stands.
Awesome. Great tip. That'll take your hunt to the next level. There's no question. Very nice.
Absolutely.
Well, guys, I can't thank you enough. It's been an honor to have you on our show and really get into some deep subject matters that I don't think we've really covered in this much depth before. Dusty, do you agree with that?
Absolutely. And it's one of them things where that's why we're here. We want to know, and we want the listeners to pull information from every podcast, and we're going to reach out to the best information that's out there. It's available for us to talk with. And, we got Jim and Jeff here, and they got, with Jim doing his biology, Florida, he's getting things going there, and who he's been, his studies with, Dr. Karl Miller. We got Jeff that's working on a major thing for the hunting industry as far as the big game logic. That's some awesome information, and we're really glad to have you guys on and pass it along.
Well, thank you so much for having us on. It's really been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Same here. It's been a lot of fun. Appreciate it, guys. Thanks for the time.
Jim, once you get settled down in Florida, we'd love to have you back on and tell us more about that Florida deer herd.
Absolutely.
That is one state we've never covered really as far as the deer herd is Florida.
Oh, really? I love the photos we get from Florida when they do show up, which is pretty rare, but there's always like a palm tree in the background. It's kind of cool. Love that part.
Exactly.
Yep.
I mean, I was on
watch out for the gators
the other day. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, awesome, guys. Can't thank you enough, and thanks for joining us on the Big Buck Podcast.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks again.
I love listening to smart people talk about deer biology.
Yeah, absolutely. The facts are right there. This is facts.
Yes.
This is the stuff that you apply to your hunts. You take this information, you put it in your brain, and it stays there. It's one of them things where we've got a lot farther depth to get into, and we're definitely going to take advantage of having Jim Stickles back on the show, and we're going to learn more about the pressures. We got to know more. There's something that applies to every hunter hits the woods.
Yeah, there's so much more to know, and I got to say that Jim sent me a bunch of links to other things to read about all this stuff, so I have my work cut out for me. I think I'll take it on the airplane when we head out to the ATA show. It'll give me some good things to get caught up on, and then God, there's so much to know about deer and deer biology. It's just fascinating.
My brain's hurting. My hand's hurting. My brain's hurting. I've been writing all this down. I tell you what, this right here will take your hunt to the next level.
Absolutely. All right, so here's a question that came up from a good friend of ours named Mike Davenport. And Mike is a listener of the show, and he's a friend of mine on Facebook, and he's also came to us through the Big Buck Registry Facebook page. And actually talked to Mike at 6 o'clock in the morning. He was at work. I won't say where he's working because I don't want him to get fired. But I was talking to him as I was getting the kids ready for school, and the question was, he has a family member who has acquired some land in Kansas, and the family member bought it to pheasant hunt, which is cool. However, he tells Mike that, hey, Mike, there's a bunch of big deer running around here. Maybe you should come out and shoot some, or at least hunt them. So the question is, how do you effectively go into an unknown area without much scouting and lay the creeper on a big buck when you get out there? What would you say to something? I have some ideas, and I want to get your perspective on that. What would you do if this was your first year out there to increase your chances?
Yeah, just pulled up on a place. I would take a day to observe, find you an observation point, and get set up on that with a good set of binocs, and definitely check out the area. You really don't want to go walking around. I don't recommend that. I would definitely get a viewpoint, walk far enough to get you a higher elevation if it's there to get up on something, and just spend a night of glassing, looking across fields, find you a thicket that that's possibly a bedding area, and stay out of that area. But I'd take one day just to kind of get my boundaries and my wits on the place and see what's going on. Your eyes are the best trail camera that you got.
Absolutely, by far. So and just from listening to Jim on this show, Jim Stickles, is that I suggested a couple other things that are completely out of the field too. Like, you don't even want to go into the field yet. First, I think you got to do some intel. And one of the best things to do, really, and like Jim said, as part of his study, is that you go to the local police department, you get some traffic reports for deer vehicle collisions and find out where those occurred. you basically kind of use your human skills to try to figure out where the deer might be crossing, and that could lead you back to some good deer hunting areas. In addition, one of my favorites is, not in addition to talking to patrolmen that are constantly in the area, and obviously there's the Fish and Game that you could talk to, or Department of Natural Resources, but you could also speak to the mailmen. Mailmen are everywhere, but they are on the road all the time. They probably know more good deer spots than pretty much anybody else.
Yeah, I agree to that. That there's all different kinds of ways to go about it, and your two is great points there that utilize the information that's already there.
Exactly. Yep.
Definitely I'd Google map it, find, get some images on the place that the general area where you're going to be hunting.
Yep.
Utilize all your options before you go.
Yeah. Google Maps is a tremendous asset, and you can figure out the lay of the land. When I think you gotta get there to figure out what's public and what's private. Not gonna be able to tell that from a Google map, but you could certainly, in some scenarios, use Google Maps to at least figure out bedding areas and all that kind of stuff, travel corridors, and then piece that information that you get offline out of the field, talking to those individuals that see deer frequently. Start mapping it together, piece it all together.
It's all a big puzzle.
It's a big puzzle. That's all it is. Let's see. We've just got a question from Griff. Did the BBR or Jay or Dusty ask the question, who was going to the ATA and what day? We have not asked that on the BBR yet, Big Buck Registry Facebook page. But Dusty, you and I will be there the 8th through the 10th.
Yeah, we're going for all 3 days.
Indianapolis, Indiana Convention Center. So if you're going, we'd love to hook up with you. Shoot us a text at 724-613-2825. Let us know when you're there, where you are, and let's do a meetup.
Absolutely. We'd love to meet some of our fans and listeners and our community followers.
Definitely. Fellow hunters that listen to the show.
I tell you what, I'm sitting here. I'm in the podcast studio, Jay, and I'm looking at one of my bucks hanging on the wall.
Yeah.
Man, I tell you what, I like the way the Euro hanger hangs a European skull mount on the wall.
That is a pretty nifty device, I have to say.
Yeah, I tell you what, I've done a lot of hunt neck things to hang deer heads on the wall, from a screw to a peg to a couple screws, and I'm fortunate that I ran into the Euro hanger, and man, I like the way it hangs.
Yeah, it's a very cool device. Such a simple device. Wish I thought of it. But yeah, neat little thing. How about a Chubby Tines tip of the week? You got anything for us, Dusty?
I do, actually. And it's one of the things. I got a phone call first of the week. Guy shot a buck. And, the first thing he says was, I'm not real sure about the shot. I said, what do you mean? He said, I think I shot a little bit farther back than I should have. He kind of jumped my string when I released the arrow. And what I told him is, this is how I live in the whitetail woods. This is my theory. When in doubt, back out. If you think you made a bad shot, if you know you made a bad shot, back out of there. Find your arrow, find the blood, see which direction the deer is headed, but don't go no farther. Give it till the next morning. Give it 5-6 hours. If you got to go to work or something, you can't make it out there, say it's going to rain, you got to give that deer some time, or you're taking a chance you're going to bump him out of the area. You're going to cause him to run and never find the deer. When in doubt, back out.
I like it. I like that one a lot. Very cool, man. Well, when we're not in doubt, but we still want to talk to you, when we're not on this podcast, Dusty, how would we find you?
Facebook.com/Chubby Tines Outdoors. You can look me up at Dusty Huntneck and also at Antler Life right there on Facebook. Jay, how can the people get in touch with you at the Big Buck Registry?
Well, first you can come hang out with me at the ATA show in Indianapolis at the Indiana Convention Center the 8th through the 10th of January. And when I'm not there and not hanging out with you, Dusty, you can always give me a call at 724-613-2825. You can just want to chit-chat about deer hunting. Hey, I'm good with that. Did that with Mike Davenport just today, actually. And if you would like to check us out online, it's www.facebook.com/Big Buck Registry. There's our blog, which is www.bigbuckregistry.com. There is Twitter, twitter.com/Big Big Buck Registry, youtube.com/Big Buck Registry. Shoot us an email. It's j@bigbuckregistry.com. If you would like to share a photo of your buck, please go to bigbuckregistry.com/mybuck, and that'll get you all the instructions you need to get your photo featured on the Big Buck Registry Wall of Fame, which is our Facebook page, and you'll be famous for a day or so. And if you would like to do a share for share because you're an outdoor company of some sort, or you just formed a Facebook page and you're all about the outdoors or deer hunting, go to www.bigbuckregistry.com/S4S. I think that's it, man. So I'm really looking forward to Indy.
Yeah, it's going to be a great show. You know, the ATA is one of the top 3 in the United States for outdoor shows. And if you're going to be in the area, come see us.
Definitely. Check us out. We'll be sporting some high quality, high visibility shirts, and you'll see our names and our tags, our Big Buck Registry logo on the back of some of those shirts. So just tap us on the shoulder. Say, hey, you told me to tap you on the shoulder, so I am.
It ought to be an awesome show, and I look forward to going there and hanging out, meeting some awesome people, and getting the best of the best that we can get as far as guests for the Big Buck Registry Big Buck podcast.
Absolutely, man. I cannot wait for that. So, well, anyway, I'm Jay Scott.
And I'm Dusty Phillips.
This is the Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Podcast. See you next week.
Can't wait.